Yes, this recording is for the term project in the intermediate database class at University of Central Florida. To introduce myself, my name is David Garland, and a brief history for myself. 38 years old, and I have been in the IT field in some manner for probably the past 18 years. I actually had owned my own web hosting company at one time about 14 years ago, and I have been self-taught on the MySQL database, the SQL language, as well as several other programming languages, such as PHP. I started off on the late end of version 2, but I really got involved with PHP version 3 when it was really new, when it really came out. I've also programmed in ASP, Cold Fusion, C++, Visual Basic, Python, and PowerShell. And of course, I've been a system administrator for the past 6 years with the Jacksonville Electric Authority up here in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, I did this project kind of by myself because, namely because I've just got a very extensive background, in doing this already. But also because I actually had a real-world application that was needed to be done. Where I work at, I actually work real close with the instrument and controls department. Now, the instrument controls department is mainly responsible for a lot of the maintenance of the transmitters and other control devices that automate the power plant. Now, one of the problems that they've had was that they've got a whole bunch of tools in the shop. Now, each technician carries their own set of tools, but there's some specialty tools that we just don't assign to everybody in the shop their own individual unique tool. So what they do is they have these tool drawers, and people go and check out tools, and they sign a little logbook. And there was some complaints about having to go back and say, okay, somebody checked the tool out, didn't check it in. Now you got a tool that's missing, nobody knows anything about it. They're having to dig through the pages trying to figure out who checked out what and when, and then go chase that person down. So the idea is, well, couldn't we do this electronically? So I got with my supervisor on the matter, and we came up with the ideas. Okay, well, what is it exactly what we need to know, to be able to get started here? To start, if we were to put this into a database, what information would you like to retrieve? And the first thing that came up was a simple spreadsheet. We ended up expanding on this in a great deal, but this is what we got started with. Was basically just these columns, and what they want to know is they want to have like a tool ID, so we have an ID number to identify the tool, because when you look at each tool, they're either engraved or chemically etched this ID number on each and every single tool. And of course a description. We also wanted to know who checked it out, when they checked it out, who it was checked in by, and when it was checked in, how many days it was out, and of course whether or not if the tool in question was overdue. The idea was that we wanted to have a limit, for a minimum number or a maximum number of days that a tool should be checked out before someone checks it back in. So a lot of times, we might get a tech, he checks something out, and it could be a small tool, specialty tool, but he ends up throwing it into his tool bag, completely forgets to send it back. Forget to bring it back, put it back into the tool bin. So we need to be able to know at a first glance, hey, real quick, which tool is checked out, and how long, if it's actually due to come back. Okay, so after we had the spreadsheet completed, I came back, and I have to admit, I really do like this program. I wish this was available back when I was messing with MySQL several years ago. But this right here, I absolutely love to be able to have a graphic representation of what I'm actually working on. So here, we started off, and based upon what we got here from the spreadsheet, obviously we have to have a table for tools. We need a table for individuals or technicians. Then of course we also need a separate table that can actually track whenever a tool is checked out, and another table for whenever it's checked in. Now, of course, the days out doesn't require a table because we can actually calculate that based upon the day it was checked out, and how many days it's been out. And same goes for overdue. Now, one of the things that you can do as far as make a determination, okay, if it's more than 3 days over, we want it to say, hey, it's overdue. Now, you can either hard code that into your programming, or you can have a separate table, and I'll get to that in a minute here. Now, when we get into the actual build of our tables here, again, like we got our users table, our tools table, and of course we got our checkout status. So we got checked out, checked in, and then a table for site settings. So here it is, we've got a session timeout, which I'll get into later, and then we've got max days checkout. So here we can build a web interface to allow the administrator, or in this case it would be the supervisor of the INC shop, to go in and say, you know what, I don't want them having the tool checked out for more than 5 days. So they just go in there and make the change, blah, done. Same thing with the session timeout. Now, the idea behind a session timeout is that we've got it programmed into the pages that when once a technician logs in, these guys are notoriously bad about staying logged in and not logging out. The session timeout is a session timeout. The supervisor can set it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. And that way, whenever the technician, he walks away, forgets to log out, well, the system will automatically log them out after the given amount of minutes. So that way, whenever the next technician comes along, and it'll have the old technician logged out, and the new technician has to log in. So that way we don't have people checking tools out under other people's names. Now, this right here was basically the first build of the database. I went through several different renditions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up each individual one, discuss them a little bit, some of the problems I ran into, and the reason why there were some changes that were taking place. But I'm going to end up editing the video here so that you won't be sitting here watching me opening each and every single one. Okay, so now here we are in the second rendition of the database build. Now, as you notice, I actually ripped the checked in table out because I was actually syncing this with the actual live database, and I was working in basically baby steps here. Now, one of the problems that I should have mentioned when I had the other screen up is that if you would have noticed earlier that the checked out and checked in had a double, you had these two references going back to a users table. Just go ahead and let you guys know that while it is possible to do this in a single select statement, it's a real pain to troubleshoot to try to pull data from two tables that are both referencing another table for the same the same foreign key. So it's one of those things to keep in mind that I finally determined later on when I was working with a supervisor. I asked him, do we really need to have the checked in? Eventually I ended up ripping the whole check in completely out. But I'll show you the steps that we went through. Now, down here, we actually came up with the ideas, well, how about having tool manufacturers? That way we can go in there instead of having to repeatedly having to type in Snap-on, Craftsman, Milwaukee, or Armstrong or whatever for each and every single tool. Couldn't we just add the manufacturer of tools in there and have it as a selectable drop-down list whenever we go in there to add or edit a tool? So here we are with a third rendition, and here we have the users. Now, as part of the programming, I actually added in a salt column here so that we can actually salt the password. This is part of the whole, protecting, the login from attacks or things like that. Now, also down here, as you'll notice, we actually introduced a tool manufacturer. We actually broke it apart from the actual tools table because we just didn't want someone to sit there and having to type in the same manufacturer names. So in this case, we actually built a special table or a special screen to where they can go in, they can add, edit, or delete manufacturers, and whenever they go to add or edit a tool, the tool manufacturer will actually just be a selected drop down. It'll just be a drop down window. They make the selection and it's done, rather than having to type it all in. So on to the next rendition. Really the only change here was I just added an ID number here to site settings. Now technically there's only one entry in this table, one row, and that's it. So this wasn't really necessary, but to keep everything looking nice and keeping everything identical, I just went ahead and put that in there. Now, one other thing I did do here is I ended up breaking the actual link, the foreign key reference, momentarily, because I was actually working through trying to troubleshoot my code, right here at this point. Again, I wasn't overly familiar with foreign keys, believe it or not. I just never really did a whole lot with it back in the day whenever I first started messing with MySQL. Okay, so here's the next rendition. Again, made a few changes here. I ended up putting the reference back in here, so it's a one-to-many reference. I also ended up changing the necessary of the foreign key reference. So you notice right here is that it's no longer a solid red from two renditions before. So basically, what it is that the user is allowed to be able to create a tool and not necessarily have to assign an ID or a tool manufacturer to the tool. They can leave that blank if they want to. And whenever the reference is built, by default a 0 is fed into this. The other you might notice right here is I ended up combining the two tables into one. And as I mentioned before, eventually we ended up taking out the whole check-in date and checked-in user, because it wasn't really necessary. I mean, if a technician techs out a tool, they're responsible for bringing it back. Now, because a lot of stuff did not work with that single table, I ended up taking one step back, reverting back to a checked out, checked in table, and I was trying to get a reference going between the checkout and check-in, so that way it was impossible to have a check-in entry without a check out, because you don't want to go in and say, hey, this tool's checked in, but we don't have a record for anybody who checked it out. You don't want that happening. So that's what I was trying to do here. Alright, so now in the last rendition, again, everything, the user, tools, tool manufacturer, site settings were the same. It was just the check-in and check-out procedure here. So in the final rendition, we ended up doing away with the checked-in user, but we did keep the check-in date time. That part was important because we wanted to know when the tool was checked in and that in fact it had been checked in. So whenever you actually have a complete entry, so what you'll see a table with 5 columns. You have your ID for your initial column, a checked out date time for the date time, and of course we also changed it from the var card to an actual date time timestamp or date time format. The ID of the user checkout, so basically the ID number of the user that checked out the tool, and then of course you would also have the ID tool ID number from the tools table. These are foreign keys, of course. Now, whenever the entry is first put in, your check-in date time will actually be a null value. There's nothing recorded in there. It's when the tool is brought back, checked back in, do we actually go and actually update this, the entry, and this time will actually be updated with the check-in date and time. Now, for listing the final version of my tables here, I'll use PHP MyAdmin because it's the interface I prefer to use. Now, I don't know if we're supposed to do this through the command line, but that just seems kind of tedious to me. Anyways, as you can see, the structure here, whenever you go into PHP MyAdmin and go over to the designer stage, you can actually see where all the tables, and of course you can see where the foreign keys are making their connections. Basically, one to many, one to many, one to many. Now, of course, the different colors doesn't really mean anything in this regard. It's just used to just identify, hey, this is this is one, this is another one, this is another one. So there's no special, special meaning to the different types of colors here. Now, as far as the table structures, we look right here. and here's our table structure. Goes through, tells us ID, checkout, date times, the date timestamp, ID user checkout, is an integer value, check-in, date time, and ID tools, integer value. And of course the ID column is an auto increment, so we don't actually fill that information in as we create each and every single entry. This will automatically be filled by MySQL itself, and it'll auto increment each and every single time. Now, if one entry ends up getting deleted, it will not go back and reuse that ID number. It will always be the next number that has not been used. Now, of course, you can go back and you can always reset that. There's a special command for doing that, but I won't get into it. You can look that up yourself. We got our site settings. Go to our structure. Again, here we are. ID, session timeout, max days checked out. None, null, null. For any of the defaults, there's nothing extra. And again, as I said, there should be only be one one entry for this one, so there's no need to do an auto increment. Tool manufacturer. Again, here we got the same thing. ID tool manufacturer. We don't actually have to add this number in. We can have it auto increment, auto generate. Now the only thing that we do actually add is actual manufacturer name, like we do on many other tables. You'll actually add that information in yourself. Go to tools. And again, this is the actual tool information. We've got the ID, tool number, description. Now, this is one thing I did forget to mention. We did actually add a couple of extra columns. Now, they were actually on the previous displays under the MySQL Toolbench program, and I just forgot to mention them. We ended up adding in a drawer location for each tool, because there's about 20 different drawers, and this right here would help a technician to quickly identify and find the tool. We've also got the model number for the tool itself. This will be pretty good if the tool ever gets lost and we ever had to order a replacement. And of course there's also the retired column. Now what's interesting about this is that a tool is never deleted from the database, because if you delete the tool, you also delete the history. Now, if you're not careful, you could delete the tool and not delete the history, but the history doesn't reference anything. So depending on how the program reacts, it may completely ignore that history. It's still in the database, but it doesn't have a tool that it's referenced to. It's never accessed, but it's still taking up space. So you kind of want to avoid just deleting tools. So in this case, we want to be able to retire a tool and still be able to go back later on and say, hey, do we still need to, do we need to unretire this tool? Do we need to order a new one and bring it back into play? And then this way they can also, by doing that, if they retire a tool and bring it back, they can still see what its entire history may have been. And of course we also added in a comment. So you say, for example, this is one of the things that the supervisors had asked for, is that if a tool has ever been replaced, if it's ever been broken, or if they just want to mention anything about this particular tool, now we actually have a comment section. And of course this is a medium text, so it's like 65,535 maximum characters, something like that. And of course we've got our users table. Again, ID, auto increment, username, the user's full name, and of course we've also added in a couple columns here. We've got obviously our password column, and then of course the salt for the password. So this way we actually get some double encryption going on. And here we got the is admin, basically is the user an admin. Now this part's very important because obviously you want to differentiate between who's your regular user and who are your admin users, because there's going to be certain tools available on the website that'll be available to an admin, but you don't want it to be available to your regular user. And then of course disabled, is the account disabled? So in this case, if they ever have a technician who leaves, quits, gets promoted, goes somewhere else, they can go in and be able to disable the user, and this way they are also not deleting the user. Same issue with the tools. And this way they're not losing the history associated with that user. Okay, so now we'll kind of get a little bit off to a tangent here, because this right here is going to get a little bit more involved than what the actual original class assignment was. Now, what we see here is actually an interface for Dreamweaver CS6 by Adobe. Now, I've been using Dreamweaver since version 4, back when Macromedia still owned the Dreamweaver. So I believe they went up to version 5 before getting bought out by Adobe, and then from there it went from CS1 to CS6. Now, what's interesting about the Dreamweaver is that you can actually see, here on the right hand side, you can actually see like the HTML layout, how the screen would appear, basically a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, with the interface and then your code over here to the side. So for anybody who is interested in website development, you cannot go wrong with Dreamweaver. As a matter of fact, I believe through USF you can get a student package. Now what they do is that student package, if you do the full price, it's pretty pricey, but Adobe actually has sort of like a payment system where you kind of rent the software from a month-to-month basis, and I think for student cost, I believe it's $20 a month, which is not bad, because the $20 a month, I believe, includes their entire CS line package, not just Dreamweaver, but everything. Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, I mean, you name it, everything. So, like I said, if you're going into web development, it's not a bad package to start playing with. Okay, so to go through the website that we built here, we'll log in, and I'll log in as an administrator. Alright, so after I logged in, the admin controls show up over here. So we've got a lot of things we can look at here. We can actually go to a check out a tool, look at the tool list, and of course see which tools are checked out. Currently we don't have any tools checked out. A tool list here, and this right here shows a list of all the tools that are currently in the system. So if we were to start here, let's say, okay, we will do check out a tool. And right now we only see just the 5 tools that are in the database. I've only got 5 tools listed here. So we go checkout tool, and I select a tool, some tool, do a checkout. Okay, now it's checked out by me. Here's the date and timestamp, number of days out, and obviously, of course, it's not overdue. We can also do a tool checkout, and let's say, for example, we've got 100 tools that are in the list, and somebody's looking for something in particular. Now, unfortunately, there's really no rhyme or reason as far as the ID numbers, and of course, the tool list is listed numerically. Now, you'll also notice here that ICO3 does not show up in the list because it is currently checked out. So, if we've had 200 tools and somebody was looking to say, okay, well, I need a screwdriver, but I can't seem to find the one in the list that I'm looking for. Well, you can always do a partial search for a word, do a search, and there it is. Pulls it right up. They can go and hit select. And it says tool successfully checked out. We go back to the tools checked out page, and it shows that I've currently got 2 tools checked out. Now for the delete records, that was insert records. Now moving on to an example of deleting tools or deleting records. Really the only thing that can be deleted in this entire database is just the tool manufacturer. Now in this database, I originally did not plan to be able to delete a manufacturer, but because of, in case there was a reason why the company refused to have a certain manufacturer, we can have the ability to pull that out. And of course, the second reason why it's in there is because of the requirements, of the assignment, is that we had to delete a record. So we'll go in here, we'll add a manufacturer, and we'll just come up with something. We add a manufacturer. We can do an edit. So this will satisfy the update records portion. Go to chump change, edit manufacturer, and we can go in there and say chimp change. And as you notice, chimp change went from chump change to chimp change. And of course, we go to delete manufacturer. And what's interesting is if I go back here and say edit a tool, we'll edit some tool 1, and we'll change that to chimp change. Save. And of course, if I look at some tool again, you notice that it's assigned chimp change. We go to delete manufacturer, delete chimp change. Now it comes back with a confirmation. If we want to delete that manufacturer, it says note, deleting this manufacturer will set tools assigned to this manufacturer to none. Whoop. Okay, I ran into a slight problem here earlier whenever I was trying to delete the manufacturer. That I still had this foreign key reference that was still tied in. That foreign key reference was actually being forced, so I had to delete the foreign key reference. This ended up being the actual true final version of the database. And of course I went ahead and synchronized it with the synchronized model command here. And after I did that, this actually started working again just fine. So we'll go right back where I left off here. We had, here we got the tool manufacturer listed as chimp change. It's already been changed before. We go here to delete manufacturer. We delete chimp change. Hit delete manufacturer. Of course we confirm. It goes through, deletes the manufacturer. We come back and check the sum tool again, and now all of a sudden the chimp change doesn't exist, and the manufacturer for the tool has been defaulted to none. Okay, so if we actually go in here and look at the code for the delete manufacturer, we go in here and we say, okay, first things first, we update tools, set manufacturer equal to 0, where the ID tool manufacturer equals blah. So what it is that whenever we delete a particular tool manufacturer, we pass the ID number of the tool manufacturer to the code, and of course this is where we capture it right here. And of course if the post equals yes, so here we go and we update all tools. Set ID manufacturer equal to 0, where ID tool so the ID tool manufacturer equal to 0, where ID tool manufacturer equals question mark, or in this case it'll be with the number we actually passed in the form here. And then once we update all the tools, we'll come down here and actually delete the tool manufacturer, where ID tool manufacturer equals question mark again the ID number. Of course we do checks to make sure that the statement executed just fine. Pass any errors. Of course, close out the statements, and of course the MySQL connection, and then of course we forward back to our previous page. Now, as far as display data from multiple tables via single select statements, again that can be showed on our tools checked out page. Again, we've got multiple tables here. All this is actually from the tool number description all the way over here to the user name, as well as the date checked out. That's all from one single select statement. Pull that up here. Okay, so here you can see is the single select. Now for the last section, where it says error free. Well, unfortunately, I did run into a slight slip up whenever I tried to delete the manufacturer, although I was able to quickly go back and actually fix that for this presentation. And to, I guess, finally go over some of the last pieces here. We've got also manage users, so we can go in here and edit existing users. We've also got a section here for adding a new user. And go in here and just put in the tech name. Username is 4+2. The way we operate is the first 4 characters of the last name plus the first initial and middle initial. Of course, we set up password and confirm password. And I thought I had fixed this. Oh no, okay, my bad. What had happened here is that I've got 2 copies of this virtual machine running. I got one on my desktop and one on my laptop. This section is actually fixed on my laptop, but it's not. I never copied the virtual machine back over with the corrections on there. So that's probably also why the deletion didn't work earlier, because everything worked flawlessly, on my laptop, and of course we've got this program now running on a desktop at work. So now in the last section here is we got settings, session timeout in minutes. Of course that's way too high, but we'll set that for 10, and maximum days out 3. Save changes, and that's done. So now if I was to sit here and not move from this screen, then 10 minutes from now the system would automatically log me out. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. If you guys got any questions for me, and hopefully I haven't missed anything in the presentation for the requirements of the presentation. But like I said, if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to email me or send me a message through Canvas.